My name is Lise Farynowski. I'm the Director of Business and Industry Development for the Department of Economic Development, Government of Yukon. And I would like to thank you for your interest and for attending today's Yukon 101. So in the next 30 minutes, I'll be offering a high-level overview of the Yukon, a profile of its region, its economy, and its investment advantages. The Yukon, of course, has been settled for thousands of years by Yukon First Nations, but from a modern-day or Western-focused economic perspective, I think the Yukon has been shaped by three pivotal events. One, the Klondike Gold Rush of 1898, which resulted in the culture of mining and mineral exploration in the territory and the unveiling of its robust mineral potential. Two, World War II and the building of the Alaska Highway in 1942, which was a contiguous link between the lower 48 and Alaska. And this was the building block of our connectivity and Yukon's quite remarkable road infrastructure. When you consider the size of the territory, which is approximately the size of California, and the fact that until recently it's had under 40,000 people in population, we really lead the way in the north across the three territories for infrastructure. And the third, between 1990 and 2005, the signing of what are considered to be the most comprehensive First Nation land claims in Canada and a much studied model for the rest of the world, which is a key component for our land certainty. So let's begin. So many say that Yukon is a special place, and we'll start with location. So there's the Yukon, we've got Alaska here, Northwest Territories, and BC. Yukon originated from the First Nation Gwich'in native word Yukana, which means Great River, which refers to the Yukon River, which flows through Alaska into the Bering Sea. It's a vast territory, roughly the size of California or Germany and Austria combined, and just representing under 5% of Canada's landmass. So as I mentioned, Yukon has 14 unique First Nations, and they're an integral part of our culture and development. 11 out of 14 have settled first land claims. And these include self-governing rights and ownership over designated lands, including surface and subsurface rights on certain areas. On their settled lands, First Nation governments have self-governing powers equal to the territorial government. And in the Yukon, we typically say there are four levels of government: federal, territorial, First Nation, and municipal. So reconciliation and strengthening government-to-government relations with First Nations is a cornerstone commitment of the government of Yukon. Many First Nations have their own development corporations or are major players of the Yukon economy and active participants and economic beneficiaries from Yukon's mineral exploration and development. So Yukon continues to be the only northern territory with a centralized connected network of maintained highways linking Yukon to Alaska, Northwest Territories, British Columbia, and Alberta, as well as the seaports in Skagway and Haines, Alaska, and Stewart, BC. So we have year-round highway system of more than 4,800 kilometers of all-weather roads, including the Alaska Highway, and the Dempster Highway, Canada's only road to the Arctic. So Government of Yukon has committed $468 million for Yukon Resource Gateway Project. This is a combined federal, territorial, and industry commitment, which has upgrades to over 650 kilometers of remote Yukon roadways, supporting areas of high mineral potential and active mine areas. We also have an international airport with regular jet service to BC and intermittently bi-weekly to Alberta. In the summer months, Yukon Whitehorse also receives seasonal scheduled flights direct from Europe, Frankfurt, Juneau, Yellowknife, Ottawa, and Toronto. And in addition to the international airport, there are smaller airports in Dawson City and Watson Lake, and numerous aerodromes throughout the Yukon, which have recently received significant territorial investment. So for nearly a century, mineral concentrates have been shipped through the port of Skagway. So the Yukon government is now working with the municipal of Skagway to consider an investment in marine service platform and associated uplands area to ensure tidewater access for Yukon ore exports and large bulk imports for decades to come. So if this goes ahead, it means a $14 million US dollar investment by Yukon into the port. And so the port is just 180 kilometers from Whitehorse on the Alaska Panhandle. Mining projects in eastern Yukon also export through Stewart, BC, if the distance is closer. We've also recently made a $75 million investment in fiber optic infrastructure. So this is 777 kilometers of the Dempster fiber line. Construction started in 2021 with completion scheduled for 2024 to provide a secondary route. So addressing our long-term energy requirements are a priority for government. On average, 90% of Yukon energy needs are met by hydroelectricity, and the balance is through diesel or natural gas. Peak demand for electricity is expected to grow by 40% in the next 10 years, driven by population and economic growth. So we've implemented the independent power production policy, allowing First Nation governments and communities or entrepreneurs to generate their own power and sell it back into the grid to meet local demands. We also have a recent $80 million combined federal territorial investment into the Atlant hydroelectric expansion project, and this is expected to add 8 megawatts of dependable capacity to Yukon's grid. As Minister Stryker said yesterday, as a note, the Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources, Yukon has already started the conversation about a grid interconnect with BC. So Yukon's population has steadily increased every year. A 19% increase since 2012. The population in June was almost 44,000. So key contributors of the population gains have been Yukon's robust economy and growing mining sector. Yukon has also seen stable economic growth in recent years. Over the past 10 years, GDP has gone up almost 20%. So major contributors to Yukon GDP in 2020 were public administration, real estate, mining, and construction. So federal government figures are showing 10% GDP growth for 2021. 45% of this is attributed to mining. Some details from Statistics Canada last labour force survey in November 2020. Yukon's labour force was 24,000 people with approximately 600 unemployed. We have an unemployment rate of 2.5%, the lowest in Canada. Out of the majority of people working are with the public sector, one of the 4 levels of government. So supporting Yukon's mineral and exploration sector is the Yukon government's geological survey. So YGS has both outstanding regional and property scale data assets, and YGS has a world-class system of assessment reports where databases of past expenditures are available to explorers and developers. The survey facility also includes a core logging facility that clients are welcome to log their drill core, and they also have a collective of representative core samples from most Yukon deposits. This core is available for anyone who wants to view and sample it. They also have extensive data mapping. And I should say all information is publicly available. So YGS compiles statistics on exploration activities, including expenditures, discovery, mine production, and these data allow the survey to track trends in the mineral sector to help inform Yukon government on economic impact of exploration and mining. So the Yukon experienced a surge in exploration and development expenditures in the mid-2000s with an increase in the price of gold, and this period of 2005 to 2012 was also boosted by expenditure by the Coffee Project and the Carlin gold mine mineralization discovered by ATAC. And this exploration and development peaked at just over $400 million in 2011, as did the gold price at that year. So we do have, declining expenditures, but we can now see a recent uptake in spending. So Yukon's investment and competitive advantages. So the cooperation and relationships between First Nations and industry and government has matured into a number of Yukon advantages that have leveraged the territory into a strong position. In terms of economic potential, the Yukon is well endowed with an array of deposit types and commodities, including world-scale copper, zinc, tungsten, critical mineral deposits, and world-class gold and silver deposits. The senior mining companies, particularly in the past 10 years, have recognized the Yukon's potential by making strategic investments and conducting M&A, such as the Goldcorp, Newmont buying Catamount for $405 million in 2016, the Rio Tinto's $25.6 strategic investment into Western Copper and Gold in 2021, and Hecla paying $135 million in stock to Wheaton Precious Metals to extinguish the silver stream in July 2020. There's also been sizable equity investments in the second half of 2022, with Snowline receiving $25 million, Banyan Gold $17 million in June, and Fireweed Metals more recently $35 million. So we also have a number of incentive and rebates and a skilled and educated workforce to make Yukon well-positioned for the forthcoming years. So we've talked about First Nations. 11 out of 14 First Nations have settled land claims, ownership of surface and subsurface rights on Category A land, and Minto Mine is an example of a mine operating on First Nation Category A land. Selkirk First Nation gets 100% of all royalties collected from the mine. The Yukon hosts significant deposits of gold, lead, silver, iron ore, rock, and placer gold. So total placer gold production from 2010 to 2021 is estimated at 1.2 billion. In addition, Yukon hosts a number of deposits containing critical minerals, including primary deposits of copper, zinc, moly, tungsten, nickel, tin, and platinum metal groups. The Fraser Institute has placed Yukon third among Canadian jurisdictions on its investment attractiveness index. So out of the 31 critical minerals on Canada's critical mineral list, only 6 have not been documented in the Yukon. And so more recently, the federal government, with its Canadian critical mineral strategy, has provided the additional flow-through tax credit, which is an attractive incentive. Juniors are able, in the charity flow-through structure, to raise capital, in some cases up to 170% premium to the share price. And as you can see, Yukon has 2 large regions that have been earmarked for the strategy. So in these, I have the Casino, Fireweed Metals, and Kutsikaya projects. So we have additional funding for exploration, $1.4 million a year in exploration grants. We are attractive for all sectors. Yukon offers numerous competitive tax advantages. We don't have territorial sales tax. We've cut the corporate business tax. And we have supportive and fair legislation for business. And we have a number of funding programs, incentive funds for general and industry specific. So energy, mines, resources, tourism, and economic development. Yukon has a skilled labor force with the highest proportion of degree holders per capita in Canada. Yukon University was established in 2020, and it houses the Centre for Northern Innovation and Mining, which provides career training to best suit Yukon labor needs in the mining sector, and also an innovation and entrepreneurship centre. So in summary, I hope you've gotten to know the region a little better, and that I've been able to convey in this Yukon 101 some of the background and opportunity for the territory. There are all the signs that Yukon has outstanding geology, from the 3 operating mines to a number of attractive exploration projects in the pipeline. We're well positioned within the Northern Territories with our combination of outstanding geology, First Nations alignment, and participation in the local governments. And while infrastructure has been sufficient to date, we certainly appreciate the need for our continued investment in power and roads to support the development of our world-class mineral assets. So again, $468 million in roads to resources for greater access to mineral exploration, $79 million in fiber, possibly $14 million in port infrastructure, $80 million in the Atlan hydro expansion, and recent discussions starting about a BC-Yukon grid interconnect. So we at Yukon Government believe that we could be in the early innings of a surge of mineral exploration and mining in Yukon, and the realization of its contribution to world resources as we head into a green economy. So anyone listening yesterday to Robert Sinn's presentation on gold in the Yukon as an emerging focus for the world might have noticed him highlighting the very significant share price returns for investors. So we appreciate that Yukon is in the global spotlight, and the government will be marketing Yukon in collaboration with the Yukon Mining Alliance at a number of conferences in 2023 to make sure that Yukon international investors understand the opportunity that Yukon offers. Thank you.